Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. We're here today in London as part of the Kesri Lehar movement and the People's Movement. And with myself, I've got John Cooper, QC. And we've just actually finished a meeting in regards to one of the issues the Kesri Lehar campaign is addressing, John, and that is the case of Professor Davinder Singh Buller. Now, the Kesri Lehar, the People's Movement, is covering a whole host of issues in relation to human rights violations, whether it's the alleged murder and rape of the 23-year-old student in Delhi last year, whether it's the human rights abuses of Christians, Dalits, Muslims. But like I say, today in particular, we focused on Professor Davinder Singh Buller because we're expecting a decision in regards to his execution anytime soon. So, first and foremost, it's the first time you've been involved with the case. It's the first time the Kesri Lehar campaign has met yourself. So what are your views around the case, and more importantly, what do you see as being the next steps?
Yes. Professor Buller's case is a very concerning case indeed. As you say, I've just become involved with it, and I'm very concerned indeed to look at the history of what's happened and what continues to happen. His conviction, certainly, when one looks at the legal analysis, is flawed, it is improper, and it is a grave miscarriage of justice. One only has to consider the evidence that supposedly convicted him, let alone the evidence in the appeal, when there was a split decision as far as the judges are concerned. Yes. This man, firstly, should not have been convicted on the evidence that was presented, and most certainly he should not have received the death penalty. There are a number of issues that flow from this. I'm concerned, for instance, how it came to be that he was extradited from Germany back to India, and then India imposed upon him a sentence of death. I'm concerned about the evidence that was gathered to convict him. I'm concerned about the process in India that was used to place him on death row. I'm concerned about the time that this man has been on death row. Is it 18 years or so, as far as he's concerned?
Professor Buller was convicted on August the 25th, 2001.
Yes.
And that was after a trial which lasted 6 years.
Yes.
And his pleas for clemency have been rejected. And currently, what do you think around the issue that he's currently receiving treatment in a hospital?
Yes. One of the issues that I raised at the meeting we've most recently had here in the House of Commons is the mental health of Professor Buller. From what I hear, he's in hospital. From what I hear, he's been diagnosed with mental health problems. Because the reality is this: any decent, democratic country that India is must take recognition of the mental state of the person they purport to want to execute. Now, if the state of Professor Buller's mental health is such that that should not and cannot take place in accordance with all the norms of decency and fairness, we need to know about it now. And when I say now, I mean today, so that it can be used to assist Professor Buller whilst we carry on the processes to find out why he was convicted, and to find out why the death sentence was imposed upon him, and to find out why it was that he was sent from Germany to India to face this risk in any event.
So also, Mr. Cooper, in terms of your message, not only just to the Sikh community, but the community as a whole in the UK, because people from varied walks of life signed the Kesri Lehar petition of 120,000 signatories. What would you say to them? What would you say to the people of the Kesri Lehar campaign, who represent various organisations, various Gurdwaras? What is your message to our community?
Certainly my message to your community and to the amazing work that you've done up until now, and that petition, what an amazing achievement that is to keep the pressure on. What is happening to Professor Buller is but an example of the risks that a number of people in India are facing and will face now the moratorium on the death penalty has been lifted. It is important that the eyes and the ears of the world are trained upon what is going on in India, a country full of democratic and decent values, and that's important to say, the biggest democracy in the world, full of people who adhere to human rights norms. We need to make sure that people in India and people outside of India realise what is going on as far as potential human rights violations are concerned in relation to Professor Bhullar and others as well. I'll put it shortly. As far as Professor Bhullar is concerned, here is a man who has been held for many, many years, anticipating his death. His mental health has now potentially deteriorated to such a state that one can hardly communicate with him. And here is a man who is facing the death penalty upon the evidence as we've seen it that cannot substantiate his guilt. Every decent person in every decent democracy must be saying now this should not happen. And what the People's Organisation, the People's Initiative has achieved here is bringing it to the attention of the international community, so much so that we speak here in the House of Commons on the verge of what we hope will be a final positive push to achieve justice in this case.
And just for the enlightenment, I suppose, of our community, it's the first time we've met. And in terms of your background, John, I suppose I should have asked this at the outset. What is your expertise in this area of work? I
was shortlisted some years ago as Human Rights Barrister of the Year by a number of organisations for my work in the human rights sphere. I have practised and written widely. I've written the leading textbook, for instance, on Article 3 torture. I'm recognised as one of the leading human rights QCs in this country, and I'm also a visiting professor of law at Cardiff University, specialising in this subject. People I've represented have been on death row, and indeed I've represented a number of groups and campaigning groups as far as torture and death sentence atrocities are concerned. Most recently I've come back from The Hague dealing with the atrocities committed, as we found, by the Iranian Republic during the 1980s. So immersed in this appalling area of genocide, of torture, of death penalty abuse. And I'd like to offer what I can for your assistance, and indeed more particularly to the assistance of Professor Bhullar's family, who I know from seeing at least one person today from that family are suffering, and often one forgets the family that suffer in these situations, and I'm sure they're grateful for the support they're getting from you and your colleagues.
I think on behalf, it suffices for me to say, on behalf of the Bhullar family, and in terms of his first cousin Kamalpreet Kaur, they give you their sincere thanks for being here today, and I think it's only fair and reasonable for me to say on behalf of the Kesri Lehar campaign, the people's movement, ordinary people, working people like ourselves, we wish to offer our thanks to yourself as well. And under the Kesri Lehar campaign, it's everybody. You know, it's all the Gurdwaras of the UK, it's all their committees, it's all the other organisations. It's a mass movement of people who have a common cause, and that common cause is simply justice.
Can I say I'm honoured to be asked to be involved and put whatever resources I have and expertise I have at your disposal.
Okay, thank you very much for talking to me. Thank you.